All right, hey everyone, happy Saturday. Sorry for the slight delay. We're having some dropped frames coming from Streamlabs, and I don't want the video to be ruined for posterity. So last time in episode 3, we were primarily focusing on our query zones still, extracting that raw data we're pulling across from the untapped API into some intermediate Delta Lake tables. So our pattern was essentially extracting or flattening the particular columns we want, like the complex data types. So you can see here for this beer one, we had to manually extract these and then do some renaming to clean them up. And then similarly with brewery, we did not get comments done, and then media and source. And now one of the things that I noticed after the session is I think comments and some of the others that weren't working using that same method had to do with the function getting overwritten in the cluster memory. When I reloaded it all from scratch, it was completely fine. Now that's kind of annoying, but it's not completely unheard of with Spark. So I'll go ahead and dive back into that episode 3 notebook and go ahead and clean that up, and we should probably have a cluster started. That would help. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and go through that, and then hopefully within the duration of this session we'll be able to get some of those gold layer notebooks working as well, and then we can look at how that gets loaded into PowerBI eventually. But we'll sort of take it step by step. So let me go ahead and start by running this parameter notebook. I'm going to clean up episode 3 first, and then we'll move on to episode 4. I'm going to step away briefly while the cluster fires up. It's always good to have your coffee by you instead of back on the counter. Okay, so I think first, let's actually do that in episode 4. I want to do the show tables command and see what actually got loaded into Delta rather than going off of my my markdown and cells, like the comments I left for myself. So we'll do that. We'll register this. This is going to register it on our GitHub repo for anyone that missed that last time. And so the way that works, let me leave edit mode. Alright, so just as soon as the cluster loads up, and actually we'll want we'll want these two, so I'll go ahead and copy them over. We don't need to do the initialization here because we're doing the credential pass-through, the Azure Active Directory credential pass-through as part of the cluster, but we'll still want to bring in our functions and secret scopes and all that good stuff. And then finally our base path. Okay, and we can see we've got beer, brewery, comments, media. So let's do just make sure that our data is still loaded in there. Okay, sure enough. So if we go back over here, brewery, we'll go ahead and mark this done. Okay, so that's all fine. We got media, we got source. Let's see what's in source. Okay, that all looks good. And then user. Okay, no user. So maybe that's where we'll pick up. So and I think there's a way to do a hyperlink in Databricks Markdown. Let me look at that. Everyone has to use different Markdown syntax for their Markdown. It's a requirement. Okay, so. Okay, there it is, link. Okay. So this is going to look cleaner. Yeah, it's that and then, okay. Okay. We'll add a double parenthesis there. Okay, cool. So now we want to do, and I don't know why. Oh, that was just for comparison. Okay, we'll leave that in. And we want to read this back in from the data lake. This is our raw table. Okay. and we can delete this. I'm going to fix the order there, and then we'll bring this back in. Okay, and then if we do okay. Cool. And then we wrote ourselves a little chunk of code over here to remove those extra names. I think that was it. Yeah, I think this is actually more accurate. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a function too. Okay, so then speaking of this comment, it looks like native type hints are going to be included for the Databricks runtime 7 with Spark 3, so I'll have to look into how all that works. Okay, so for here we can call this, let's say, clean. Okay, and then we'll do I don't love that pattern, so I'm going to do and so this is going to, rather than being a deep copy, this should be just a reference to the DF, specifically that RDD. And so then when we do this, it'll still leave the original copy unchanged. And then after a loop, we can return okay. Okay, so then oh yeah, would probably help. So what was that? User. Sweet. Okay, and then we can steal our little create register delta table. Okay, and that wanted a data frame, a name, a path. I think that's how we were doing it last time. Okay, cool. So we've done, oh, we never did do badges. Or no, we did untapped badges. I assume that's what that is. Wonder why. If I was doing that right now, I would just call it badges. So I'm just kind of curious if I left any thoughts on that. Maybe that was in episode 2. Oh yeah, sure enough. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. It doesn't really matter, but okay, so we'll do would help to have this in there. So this is going to delete all the data, and then we'll go ahead and drop the table. This is some of our Delta Lake stuff, the features that make it more of a data warehouse or the Lakehouse paradigm like we've talked about. Specifically being able to do those deletes. And then we'll do drop. Okay, let's see if that does it. Did it not run? Okay, cool. So now, like I was saying, if we're going to do this from scratch, so we have this array. So we'll do a similar pattern to that, I guess. So we'll have I don't think I've imported call yet. Okay. Then we'll want badges.count. And we'll have that be and then we'll need to explode the array, which was called items. And we can call that we won't worry about that. Actually, we'll rename it after we, or when we rename everything. And then retro status. Okay, and then we can do df badges flat. We'll do that with df. And we'll alias this as okay. And then let's try this. Okay. Cool. And then we'll do our cleanup for the column names. We want, yeah, items. Okay, cool. And then we'll go ahead and grab this. Okay. So now we've got badges and user covered. So we've got badges, beer, brewery, comments, media, source. Okay, toasts is next, and that's going to work a lot like brewery. Oh, I just realized I've been doing this in basically 4K resolution, and I normally record at 1080p for my desktop. So let's bump that up. Okay, there we go. Should be a little easier to see. And comment in the chat if you'd prefer something a little bit in between. But this is what it would look like on a 1080p monitor. Okay. So for toasts, it's still going to be an items array. So we can literally just steal all that. I can probably flatten these. And you can even hide the result if you need extra space. I don't know if I've shown that before. So under toasts, we have our count. We also need, oh, I did not mean to click on that. Or did not mean to download it. We also have auth toast. Auth toast and total count. Okay. Okay. That looks good to me. Okay. So toasts is done. And so is user. Come on. Okay, there we go. Okay. So now what we need to pull in are all these ones that aren't part of a table. So if I weren't working, or if I hadn't already created a table called untapped, this is probably what I'd call untapped. We can call it untapped facts is probably fine. And so what we're going to want to do is start by pulling in this, check-in comment, check-in ID, and so on. So we'll go ahead and, come on, fold back up. I don't know why it insisted on doing that. And I'm going to go ahead, Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write my, select right here. df, we'll call it facts is going to be equal to df, and we're going to use the call. There's going to be check-in comment. Okay, created at. Rating score. And then venue. And I think that's it. Let's see. Okay, so that looks good. Now, this is also going to be where we try and connect together with our ID columns. So like in badges, we can see that we have a badge ID here, right? And so if we want to be able to get, for instance, connect the badges table to the beer table, rather than store the badge ID for every respective beer, we're going to sort of keep this lookup table here for that. So what this is going to look like is going to be a little bit funky, but we'll see, and it'll be a good repeatable pattern for us. So we'll do explode of call, and that's going to be badges dot items, and then we can alias that as badge items. And if you look, we want to get in from badge items to badge ID. So we could do I'm trying to think of the best way to do this inline, because we don't want to repeat all of the code. I wonder if we could do I think we could use one of our array or struct access items here. Let me look at the structure of this again. So we've got a struct, and we want the badge ID from it. So we can create a new struct. Yeah, this is all a little too generic. So I don't think we're going to be able to do that all in one line. So let's do it like this. exploded. So let's just do this, and then we can repeat it for each of the underlying tables. It's going to be a little bit messy, but oh well. So badge items, and then for beer we want the BID, which is going to be easier. So we can do I want to see if we actually called that beer ID. Yes, we called it beer BID. Okay. Okay, so that one's taken care of. And then brewery was brewery ID, so that's easy enough. We'll make sure we kept that name. So we just called it ID. Okay, we'll keep brewery ID here. And some of that could probably use some cleanup, but your code always reads that way a couple weeks after you've written it. Not the first time, not the last time. This will do. Just make sure this still runs. Okay. Okay. Okay, so comments, I'm going to keep a little list of the arrays that we need. So the first one was for brewery, or sorry, for badges and comments. So these are kind of messy because of the fact that you could have a one-to-in relationship between check-ins and comments or check-ins and badges. With everything else, it's one-to-one. Like you can only have one beer per check-in. You can only have one brewery per check-in. So maybe what we'll do, and I actually kind of like this better, is create lookup tables for badges and columns separately and any of the other nested ones. So we'll take a look at what that looks like. And it looks like photos will be the same. Okay. And same with toasts. Any of these where there can be a one-to-n. Now, I'll be frank, I don't use the app enough or have enough of a network on the app to where a lot of these are even going to have a one-to-N relationship, but we want to model it the right way. Okay, and then we can do our user ID. Okay, so that all looks good. Okay. Okay, so we've got all that there, and then what we'll want is to make tables for badges, comments, media, and toasts that connect back to check-in ID, and then we can use check-in ID to get to anything else we need. But let's go ahead and write this out first. And, you know, typically you would spend more time than this designing your data model. We're probably going to have to return back to this at some point, but for now, I'm pretty happy with it. You know, what can you do? So we'll leave some markdown here. We'll create one for each of the nested ones, so we can have df badges max and have that be equal to we want our check-in ID. And then we're also going to want to explode out that items array. And we'll alias this just like before, and we'll see what we get here. Yeah, so just as expected, this struct, and so we're gonna want to just grab and we're going to do items dot badge ID and then we'll do the same for user badge ID. Badge ID, and then we'll do And I think we will actually have time to look at Power BI today, just looking at the clock. We'll see. Kind of keeping that in the back of my mind, but I don't want to rush any of this stuff. Okay, and we'll do that. That's all fine. Yeah, so this is just a lookup table that maps between check-in ID, badge ID, and user badge ID. I don't see anything else in there that we'd want. So we can go ahead and write that out. Okay, and then excuse me. This summer weather with the pollen has been killing me. I guess not as bad as spring, but still. Okay, so next, we're going to use this same pattern. We said it was going to be, oh, I guess I've got it written right here. That would help. Okay, create comments. So we're going to do df comments, facts. Okay, and we want items. Okay. Okay, and then here we're going to grab those nested columns. So underneath items, we want to grab check-in ID. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know why it has that twice. Maybe it's because they knew that this was going to be kind of inconvenient. Oh well, we'll assume that those match, and we've already got our real check-in ID. So we just need comment ID. And then, oh, that's interesting. It gives us a user ID too, but again, we've already got that user ID down here, so we'll just keep comment ID. And it even gives you venue too. Oh, I bet this is the comment of the of the user. Let's look at something real quick. So like the comment could be coming from a user and it's storing their user ID, so that might actually be something we want. Let's just look. Okay, that's not going to be very helpful. But we can see the check-in ID is the same. So I bet I do want this user ID. Long story short. So this items.user dot That's interesting. And you can get quite a bit of information from that too. Thankfully we already have that stored in check-ins though. So really, let me check. Really, we could go from this, comment ID to the check, or from the check-in ID to the comment ID, and then in our comments table, wherever we ended up doing that, was that episode 3? Yeah. You'll see that we have this user ID, and so we don't necessarily need to store that here. So I was getting ahead of myself. So we'll just do the one. Okay. That works for me. Yeah. Okay. That works for me. We might need to clean that up later. We'll call it facts. What did I call this last one? Fact. Okay, cool. Now I just have media and toast left. I swear we're going to make it to Power BI. Actually, let me go ahead and get Power BI firing up in the background. It can sometimes be a little bit slow, but I bet today it just opens up immediately to mock me. Okay, let's do media. Okay. So checking column ID, explode. Okay, this one's going to be easy. Okay, and then oh, duh. By the way, I was going to point out, if we're referencing from this DF as frequently as we are, on a bigger data set, it would probably make sense to go ahead and think about how to partition or cache this properly. I'm treating a lot of this kind of like local single cluster development. Now, what's cool about Spark is that you could obviously scale that up with the same code, right? But like, we shouldn't necessarily neglect what that bigger scale code is going to look like just because we're not doing it yet. So keep that in the back of your head. Okay, cool. Okay, and now we just have toasts. Okay, and under items, we have a like ID and then user ID. We can again get back to the user ID stuff once we actually go to the toasts table. So I don't really feel compelled to include anything other than the like ID. So we'll do it that way. DF toasts. Okay, so now we have, if we were to go back up here, we have tables and fact tables for every one of our little sources there, including our raw table. So let's go over into Power BI. And I want to check real quick. I bet I have an out-of-date version, but it should still be, okay, yeah, March 2020. Okay, we'll see. I don't believe that they've added anything for Spark in the last couple months, but the way that I'm going to show you still feels a little bit janky. So let me show you this. Okay, come on. So you essentially are going to use your personal access token and then some of the server info to connect this. So we've talked about getting a personal access token. We'll go ahead and repeat how to do it. So this access token, I've already got one for the CLI. So you'll create that. And then you get your server name and host from the URL. There's some specific instructions here. So if we go to the cluster configuration, over here under here you can get all that good stuff, and then you would construct the server address like so using that host name that you found, and then you would configure the connection using Spark. There's not anything specific for Databricks yet, so we'll go ahead and walk through that. So first I'm going to generate my token. We're going to leave that up. And then I'm going to go ahead and fire open my text editor to create that connection string. Okay. Then we're going to have that off screen here because I don't necessarily want, you know, every one of you guys being able to connect to my cluster. No offense. So then we're going to start by taking this, and then we'll put in the server host name, which in our case, I'll go ahead and show you this part. In our case is right here. So where it says server host name in the diamond brackets, we'll go ahead and do that, and then so that server host name, HTTP path. So that's going to be here. So ours is going to look like this for the path. So I just got that and that. And then our token gets used as the auth. So I'll go ahead and go over here and we'll do Spark For our protocol, they want us to do HTTP, and we'll do import mode here. I might change my mind there. So if you look here, I thought it might have more information. Basically, import is going to load all the data into Power BI and then not rely on the connection to the cluster until we try and refresh. This could be good for us because not only is the data pretty small, but it would allow us to do some like dimensional modeling work and visualization work with the cluster not spinning. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that mode. And then our username is going to be token, and then our password is the token that I just copied over from my user settings window. Paste. There we go. Okay, let's try this one more time. I don't think I've ever gotten this to connect right on the first time, so let's look. So that looks yeah, that .4, and then all that looks okay. Oh, did I drop? There we go. That's, I think, what I'm missing. It should be this should, I think, have a 443. Let me look. So we want that SQL protocol /o. Yeah, okay. Let's look. Let's try this. And I'll change it to direct query too, just so that we're following the exact same pattern as the instructions. And then for the token, yeah, and it wants token. And then maybe it likes this now, maybe not. Sure seems like it does now. Ah, there we go. And we'll see all of our tables in here. Lovely. We want to go ahead and bring all of this in other than untapped. And if you remember from one of our initial episodes, this table is actually what I was initially using in Power BI. And I just flattened all the data within Power BI itself. Now, if we do it on Spark, we have this Data Lakehouse model, and they you know, allow you to bring in these tables to multiple sources without it being problematic. don't have to redo the work every single time. Oh, okay. I didn't even think about that. We're gonna have to set up our credential pass-through for Power BI. So let me see if there's a known basic technique for this. Otherwise, this might get to be the start of the next episode. Let's just read this real quick. Well, that's nice. And we have the credential pass-through. This might be a reason to use the service principal. But what we might do instead is write them out to tables within the data lake, like using the table service. Or we could even set up a SQL server. Let's see. We'll give this a shot, and then if that doesn't work, we'll come back to this next time. So let me terminate this. Wait, did it not actually save that? What the hell? Okay, maybe it's just not scrolling. Okay, sure. Okay, there it goes. And we'll see. Nothing else is going to change. Our JDBC connection is going to be the same. Our token is going to be the same. Just trying this Hive config. And I guess while that runs, I'm going to look at this post from the Databricks side about it. And actually, all these could be relevant. Yeah, it seems like the credential pass-through just isn't, like it's passing the credential token through when we're connecting in Databricks, but it seems like it's not doing it once we get to Power BI. Interesting. And it doesn't work with Databricks Connect either. Because at some point I wanted to look into Databricks Connect. That's interesting. I bet this is something they might give some attention to at the conference. But let's try it one more time. Okay, sure enough. I'll do some more research on this. Really, this mode, again, where we're connecting to Spark, the Spark cluster directly, isn't really the way that we would want to do this anyway. It's just sort of a shortcut so we can start visualizing and looking at the data. But in production, you definitely want to land that somewhere else anyway. So let's close this out for now and then go back into Spark real quick, and I can show you an example of the kind of work that we want to do next time. So if we just did okay, and so we could, even in Databricks, do some nice visualization. So like if we took as our key, let's see, so for the values I want, say, ABV, and then we can group by style. And then for this, we'll do an average. And then we can, let's do, yeah, I think that's fine. And then I guess we could even do a little grouping in there. I think almost all the ones I've drank are probably active. But yeah, that's an example. And then you can kind of see if we scroll over, you know, a Hefeweizen is going to have a lower ABV than a you know, Imperial IPA or an Imperial Stout. Now, if I apply this and I do this, it's going to make our chart a little bit better. Right now, it's still the reason it's jagged like this is because, remember, we're aggregating as part of our chart, but it's still kind of nice. And then if we were to do something like this, where we get some location data. We can do some pretty cool stuff here as well. Again, similar to Power BI. So if I made this world map, and then we made this let's see if there's a oh, okay. It wants city, maybe, or country name. And we can I guess we'll have to play around with that. The value should be so if we look, yeah, that's interesting. The states are already in the right format. I haven't played around very much with the world map chart style, but these state abbreviations are fine. So I'll have to look at that, but you know, if we went back to doing a bar chart, you know, we could do account, account of this, and then group it by state. And then we could even do cities within those states. And so let's do that. And you can kind of see, like, this is going to be Kansas City within Missouri, you know. But yeah, that's an example of the kind of data that we have available. And so next time we'll start writing some aggregations on top of that and creating basically tables and views for the kind of metrics we want to start tracking against this underlying data.